Safeguards are in place to prevent abuse of Singapore's new work pass, aimed at attracting top overseas talent earning at least $30,000 a month. This comes as the country goes on the offensive in the global war for highly skilled workers. The Manpower Minister assures Parliament that it will vet applicants carefully. So, to share more details, our reporter Michelle Teo joins us in the studio.
Michelle, Singaporeans are concerned about the potential abuse of this pass, or in the case of fraudulent applications. What safeguards are there in place now?
Well, absolutely. This is one of the topmost concerns for a lot of Singaporeans. And in fact, 24 questions from members of parliament were filed. And one of the key features was precisely this. How do we have safeguards in place to prevent abuse from happening? Well, one of them is that currently what happens is that the Manpower Ministry will have to vet the salaries of individuals who apply for these schemes. They have to cross-check them against verifiable documents on whether or not this salary has indeed been paid out to them. And moving forward, for those from overseas, for example, they would have to face checks based on their companies, market capitalization, revenue figures as well. And if they do not actually have the minimum qualifying salaries or other requirements, then their pass could be cancelled.
Talk us through what else ONE pass holder gets. I understand it also comes with work privileges for their spouses. No time limit for the pass holders to get those jobs, or how many can be brought in?
Yeah, absolutely. The letter of consent is something that is given to spouses of pass holders for the ONE pass. The letter of consent is quite an interesting one because it ensures that individuals have the right to work in Singapore and they don't necessarily earn that through merit of their own. So that is something that is quite unique to the ONE pass, unlike the other employment pass schemes that we've seen. One of the things that we're seeing is that the reason why there is this why this is necessary is because when top tech talent, for example, seek to relocate, it's usually a family decision, which means that you do need their spouses, for example, to be able to enter to work in Singapore, which we do see these sort of work pass privileges happening in other jurisdictions like Hong Kong, for example, or UAE and the UK. And in terms of numbers, we're looking at not that much in terms of who it applies to. For example, ONE Pass applies to only the top 5% of EP holders, which is about 8,000. And even though there's no quota or no time limit in which they have to be employed, that is given that the nature of the scheme is still highly selective. And here's Dr. Tan to speak more.
If we accept that there is never enough of top talent to go round the world, then it does not make sense for us to limit the amount of talent we are bringing in. If we impose a quota, we are essentially putting a hard limit on how strongly we can compete at the high end of the global economy. This ultimately hurts Singaporeans, who will then have fewer opportunities.
Well, Michelle, Dr. Tan, they're outlining what happens if we fail to bring in talent, so how it would hurt us. But how would we measure the success of this scheme, whether in terms of local employment or in any other kinds of metrics?
Well, to be frank, the contributions of individuals would vary very considerably based on what they do and what sectors they're in. So, for example, if you were working for a company, which they could be employees of, then it might include bringing in new business units, growing a company's revenue, and that could be the contribution. It could also be something like, setting up your own company in Singapore, employing locals, bringing more of their talent, of their knowledge from overseas to the Singapore market. Or it could be even something like advising or consulting local homegrown firms to expand overseas. And Dr. Tan illuminated a little bit more on this.
We are building a rich network of markets, people, and ideas that over time will show up in the dynamism of our economy. And if, at the macro level, local job creation remains strong, unemployment low, real income growth sustained, and if, amongst our people, there's always a sense of hope and and of opportunities, then I think we would have succeeded.
Well, you heard from Dr. Tan, and one of the things that we want to see most is it benefiting our small and medium enterprises, which after all are the backbone of our economy. 99% of enterprises in Singapore are in SME category. And in the case for SMEs, how they could benefit from this could be they could either be partners or suppliers or service providers to these particular new business entities, or they could directly hire the ONE pass holders or invite them to be on board their boards for more consultancy services.
Has there been any thought about codifying then the transfer of knowledge into law?
Absolutely. I think that was one of the key questions that a lot of MPs asked as well, because after all, we want to measure and we want to make sure that that is actually passed on. So one of the things about codifying is actually it's very deterministic. Because if you think about it, if the contributions are so varied, then there really isn't a single benchmark in which you can say, hey, I need a certain time frame to have my skills transferred or the amount of skills transferred. Instead, what is really needed is that businesses will have to play their part, make sure you're attracting the right talent, for example, and making sure that there's still a strong local core at the very base to be able to benefit from these talents.
Okay, Michelle, hold that thought for a second. We will be talking more about Singapore's talent offensive in just a bit. But following his speech on the new ONE Work Pass, parliamentarians questioned the Manpower Minister on the transfer of skills from foreign talent to the local workforce.
Great Britain as saying, and I quote, the individual Dimitri Volkov of the...
Leader of the opposition, Pritam Singh, asked how this transfer would be promoted and tracked, while MPs Ang Wei Ning and non-constituency MP Leong Man Wai asked how the ministry will ensure that skills are passed on to the local workforce.
Has the minister ruled out fixed-term employment passes or other schemes that incentivize such skills transfer to Singaporeans to address skills-related underemployment, amongst other things?
Can I ask the minister whether we have been attracting the right kind of talents, since now 95% of the GPs currently do not meet the one pass requirement?
We are working for all the other routes through different sector agencies in terms of coming up with a framework, and we will also, as I've shared, with MOE, with MCCY, with NRF and a few other agencies to identify some of these criteria in which we can target this global talent with this kind of expertise. The scheme will start on 1st of January 2023. Towards the end of the year, I suggest you watch this space. More details will be released in due time.
MPs also asked what the new work pass would mean for small and medium-sized enterprises who are already facing intense competition for the talent they need to grow their business.
I would like to ask the Minister to elaborate on how we can give assurance to local workers, especially the broad middle segment, that they can benefit from this.
Is there further direct support, direct benefits for SMEs to give them the support to find the talent that enables them to be the future LLEs and to reduce being further disadvantaged in this intense competition for talent?
That singular objective of how we can continue to provide opportunities, good pay, good career progression for our Singapore local core. That is really at the core of what we do. The ONE Pass is about creating new cheese, new opportunities, new economic opportunities, new diaspora of different sectors for it to then spill over to our SMEs. So I want to reassure all members of the House that this is the core of what we do. It is for our Singaporeans, our fellow Singaporeans, for our future. Because 50 years down, I think many of you would still be around. You want to continue to see Singapore to still be brimming with opportunities, optimism and hope.
Michelle, of course, moves, even good moves, are always difficult because it involves some change. The question, I suppose, is Why now? Why the urgency now?
Well, you heard Dr. Tan earlier speaking about new cheese, the need to grow the economy, especially after more than 2 years of a pandemic having wrecked our reserves, our economic performance, for example. So one of the key to achieving that is really having that pool of talent situated in Singapore to really help us innovate and drive some sort of change. And really, this isn't just about Singapore. We're not the only ones who are looking out for top talent. It's a global race. And you're looking at countries, for example, from the UK to Germany to UAE, who already have these schemes. In the UK, for example, they're even going further upstream to look at graduates from top universities, from places from China, Hong Kong, Singapore, for example, to have them work in the UK for 2 years, and they don't need to have a job there first. Closer to home, you're seeing things like these being rolled out in Malaysia, in Thailand. In Thailand, we're looking at them having an aim to bring in 1 million talented and wealthy foreigners within the next 5 years. And how that differs from us is the pass is for 10 years, and there's actually a lower minimum qualifying salary because for the Thai pass, you need an annual salary of about $80,000, which translates to about slightly more than 110 Singapore dollars, versus in Singapore, where it's 30,000 monthly from a single employer, bringing us to about 360K annually. That's 3 times the amount for another country. And in Thailand, for example, if you pass holders can have a personal tax reduction of up to 17%, which we don't have here in Singapore. So the competition is really stiff when we're looking at our regional partners beyond Singapore even. And that's especially important for Singapore to be on the offensive right now, especially because people really are our only resource. And I'll leave Dr. Tan to say more.
Singapore cannot be playing a defensive game when it comes to talent. The better we are at attracting and retaining the best talent, local and global, the higher the chances of securing our economic future and to continually be able to generate good jobs for all Singaporeans. Conversely, if we don't do this well, and we cede competitiveness to other jurisdictions, we may not even be able to hang on to our best Singaporean talent.
Dr. Tan See Leng there, but thanks so much, Michelle. Michelle, to outlining what Singapore is doing to stay competitive in this intense global race to get our hands on the best human talent.